The night Ada demanded something impossible, her husband Joe almost left her forever. Not because he was tired. Not because he stopped loving her. But because what she asked for that night, at 2 a.m, in the middle of a thunderstorm, was something no living man could find. And when he failed her, she said 5 words that cut him so deep he still hears them in his sleep. But here is the part nobody talks about. What Ada did next changed everything. Not just for her marriage. Not just for her family. For the entire street they lived on. This is that story. Joe and Ada lived in a flat on Benson Close, a busy, noisy street in Lagos where generators hummed all night and neighbors knew your business before you did. Their apartment was on the 2nd floor, small but warm. Ada had painted the walls yellow because she said yellow made her feel like the sun was always inside. Joe worked at a logistics company in Ikeja. He drove a delivery van 6 days a week, came home smelling like petrol and sweat, and still found the energy to cook dinner when Ada was too tired. That was the kind of man he was. Quiet strength. Big heart. Ada worked as a hairdresser at a salon 3 streets away. She was loud in the best way, the kind of woman who walked into a room and made everyone feel like they had been waiting for her. She laughed from her belly. She argued with passion. She loved with everything she had. They had been trying for a baby for 3 years. 3 years of hospital visits. 3 years of bitter medicine. 3 years of Ada crying in the bathroom so Joe wouldn't see. 3 years of Joe pretending he wasn't breaking inside every time another neighbor announced a pregnancy. Then one Thursday morning, Ada stared at a small white stick in the bathroom and screamed so loud that Mama Bisi from downstairs came running upstairs with a broom, thinking somebody was being robbed. "I'm pregnant!" Ada screamed, tears flying down her face. "Joe! Joe! Come and see!" Joe ran out of the bedroom with one leg still in his trousers. He looked at the stick. He looked at Ada. Then this big, quiet, strong man sat down on the bathroom floor and wept like a child. It was the happiest day of their lives. But happiness, as anyone who has truly lived knows, never comes alone. It always brings a suitcase. The first few weeks were beautiful. Ada glowed. Joe floated. Their neighbor Mrs. Kate, a sharp-tongued woman who had never once said anything kind in 15 years, stopped Ada on the staircase and said, "You look like a goddess." Even Dr. Tunde, their family doctor, smiled at the scan results and said, "Everything looks perfect." Then the cravings started. At first, it was small things. Ada wanted puff puff at 7 in the morning. She wanted iced water with a squeeze of lime at midnight. She wanted fried plantain done only on one side. Joe handled all of it without complaint. He was so happy to be a father that every strange request felt like a gift. But then the requests got stranger. "Joe," Ada said one afternoon, her voice slow and dangerous like a storm gathering on the horizon. "I want a mala. But I don't want it made with yam flour. I want it made with the yam flour from that woman in Mushin Market. The old woman who sells near the gutter." Joe blinked. "Mushin. Ada, that's 1 hour from here." "The baby wants it," Ada said simply. Joe went to Mushin. He found the old woman. He bought the flour. He came home 2 hours later, soaked in sweat, and made the amala himself because Ada said she could smell when a man was angry and she didn't want angry amala. Ada ate 3 spoons. "It's cold," she said. Joe stared at her. "It's cold, Joe. I can't eat cold amala." He reheated it. She ate 2 more spoons, pushed the plate away, and asked for a cold Fanta. Joe went to the fridge and breathed very slowly. Now, their street was full of people with opinions. There was Mama Bisi from downstairs, always at her window, always watching, always ready with a comment sharper than a razor blade. She had 4 children and believed that every problem in the world could be solved with prayer and pepper soup. There was Mr. Checker from next door, a retired civil servant who wore the same cap every day and thought it was his job to advise every young couple on the street. He had been married twice and divorced twice but still considered himself an expert on marriage. There was Caro, Ada's best friend, the salon assistant, a small fierce woman who wore big earrings and had a mouth that moved faster than her brain. Caro loved Ada like a sister, but she also loved drama like a second husband. And then there was Auntie Rose. Auntie Rose was Joe's older sister. She lived 20 minutes away and had made it her life's mission to have an opinion about everything Joe did. She didn't like Ada from the beginning. She smiled at Ada's face and sharpened her tongue behind her back. When the pregnancy news spread, Auntie Rose was the first to arrive at the flat. "Congratulations," she said, hugging Joe tight and patting Ada like she was patting a dog. "Thank you, Auntie," Ada said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You should come and stay with us during the pregnancy," Auntie Rose told Joe later in the kitchen, her voice low and sweet like sugar hiding a blade. "You know how these things can be. Some women, the pregnancy changes them. They become someone else." Joe said, "Ada is fine, Auntie." "For now," Auntie Rose said. She was not wrong, but she was also not kind. And those are two very different things. As the months passed, Ada changed. Not suddenly. Slowly. Like a fire that starts small and then, before you know it, the whole room is burning. She stopped laughing as much. She became irritable in a way that had teeth. She stopped saying sorry after arguments and started adding more words to make every fight bigger. She cried about things Joe didn't understand and refused to explain them. She looked at him sometimes with eyes that were far away, like she was seeing something behind him that he couldn't see. Joe tried everything. He read books about pregnancy. He watched videos online. He talked to Dr. Tunde, who told him, "Hormones are powerful, my brother. Just be patient." So Joe was patient. He washed plates without being asked. He stopped watching football at night so the noise wouldn't disturb Ada. He gave up his side of the bed because Ada said she needed to spread out. He started sleeping on the couch. He didn't complain. Not once. But patience has a bottom. And the night Ada hit the bottom of Joe's patience, the whole of Benson Close heard it. It was a Tuesday. 2 in the morning. The rain was coming down so hard it sounded like the sky was angry about something. Joe was on the couch, half asleep. He had worked a double shift that day. His body felt like concrete. Then Ada walked out of the bedroom. Joe opened his eyes and looked at her. She was standing in the living room in her nightgown, her belly round and heavy under the thin fabric, her eyes wide and strange. "Joe," she said. "What is it?" "The baby. Should we go to the hospital?" "I want suya." Joe sat up slowly. "What?" "I want suya. From Malam Yusuf." Joe stared at her. Malam Yusuf was the suya man who set up his grill every evening on the main road. But it was 2 in the morning. In heavy rain. "Ada, Malam Yusuf has closed since 9 o'clock. Then go and find him. Knock on his door. He lives somewhere near the motor park." Joe looked at his wife. The rain hammered the window behind her. Thunder rolled across the sky. "Ada, it's 2 a.m. It's raining. I don't even know exactly where Malam Yusuf lives." Ada's face changed. It was the kind of change that happens before something breaks. "You don't care about this baby," she said. Her voice was flat and cold. "You never did. You pretended to want this child, but when it's time to sacrifice, you sit there." Joe felt something shift in his chest. "That is not fair." "Go," she said. "Or I will go myself." She reached for her slippers. Joe stood up. "Ada. I said I will go myself." Her voice cracked. Her hands were shaking. She was crying now, big ugly tears running down her face. "Nobody cares. Nobody ever cares. I'm carrying this baby alone, Joe. Completely alone." And there it was. The sentence that knocked the air out of Joe's chest. He looked at this woman he had loved for 7 years, this woman he had driven to Mushin for flour, this woman he had given up his bed and his sleep and his rest for, and he felt something he had never felt before. He felt invisible. He grabbed his car key. He walked out of the flat without a word, without a jacket, into the pouring rain. He sat in his car for 10 minutes. Rain drumming on the roof. Hands on the steering wheel. Going nowhere. His phone buzzed. Caro. He frowned. Why was Caro calling at 2 in the morning? He picked up. "Joe." Caro's voice was rushed and tight. "I saw your car light on from my window. Are you okay? Ada called me crying." "She's fine," Joe said. His voice was flat. "Joe, talk to me." Silence. "She said nobody cares," he finally said. "Caro, I have not slept properly in 3 months. I gave up my bed. I drove to Mushin on a Saturday morning for yam flour. I have done everything. Everything. And she said I don't care." Caro was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Joe, can I tell you something that I have wanted to tell someone for weeks?" "What?" "Ada is scared." Joe said nothing. "She doesn't say it because she doesn't know how to say it. But I know her. She is terrified, Joe. She waited 3 years for this baby. 3 years. And every morning she wakes up and the first thing she does is check if everything is still okay. She is not sleeping either. She lies in that bedroom every night listening to the baby's heartbeat, praying. She is not angry at you. She is afraid. And fear in a woman who has been disappointed before, it comes out looking like anger." Joe's hands tightened on the wheel. "I failed her," he whispered. "No," Caro said firmly. "You are both failing at communicating. There is a difference." Joe sat in the rain for a long moment. Then he started the car. He didn't find Malam Yusuf. But he drove to a 24-hour supermarket on the expressway, bought the closest thing to suyar they had, kilishi, the dry spiced meat, still wrapped and still warm from the display warmer, along with a cold Fanta, a pack of chin-chin, and a small bunch of bananas because he remembered Ada had eaten bananas happily 2 days ago. When he got back upstairs, the flat was quiet. Ada was sitting on the couch with her legs folded under her, holding a pillow against her chest. Her face was swollen from crying. She looked small in a way that big personality people look small when they are truly broken. She looked up when Joe came in. He put the bag on the center table. He pulled out the kilishi. He laid it out on a plate. He opened the Fanta. He sat down beside her. Neither of them spoke. Ada picked up a piece of kilishi. She chewed slowly. "It's not the same as Malam Yusuf's," she said. "I know," Joe said. "It's okay though," she said quietly. Her voice was small now, the anger completely gone. What was left was just a tired, scared woman. "Thank you." Joe put his arm around her. She leaned into him. Her belly pressed warm and round against his side. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry too," he said. They sat like that for a long time while the rain came down outside. And for a moment, it felt like they had found their way back to each other. But Benson Close had been watching. And Benson Close never let peace last very long. The next morning, Auntie Rose appeared at the door at 8 o'clock with a pot of food and a face full of concern. Joe was in the kitchen when she arrived. He could hear her voice from where he stood, that sweet, slow voice that always preceded trouble. "Ada dear," Auntie Rose said, sitting across from Ada in the living room, both hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "I heard things were difficult last night." Ada looked up slowly. "Who told you?" Auntie Rose waved her hand vaguely. "Benson Close talks, you know how it is. I'm just concerned." She leaned forward. "Ada, I want to say this with love. You need to be careful how you treat my brother." Ada was very still. "Excuse me." "Joe is a good man. A patient man. But every good man has a limit. You are sending him out at 2 in the morning in the rain. You are saying he doesn't care when he does everything for you." Auntie Rose shook her head slowly, her expression arranged in perfect sympathy. "I've seen marriages break under pregnancy stress. I just don't want that for you too." Ada stared at this woman. She felt the familiar fire start low in her stomach. "Auntie Rose," Ada said, her voice quiet and dangerous. "Did Joe send you here?" "No, of course." "Did Joe ask you to come here and say any of this?" A small pause. "I'm just..." "Then with all due respect," Ada said, standing slowly, one hand on her belly, "this is between me and my husband. And I will ask you to leave our home." Auntie Rose's perfect sympathy cracked just slightly. She looked at Ada. Then she smiled, that specific smile that women who intend violence wear when they want to look peaceful. "Of course," she said, standing. "I just want the best for everyone." She left. Joe walked in from the kitchen. He had heard everything. I should have said something, he said. You should have, Ada agreed. She was shaking slightly. Why does she always come here to divide us, Joe? Joe sat down. He looked at his hands. She means well. She just doesn't know how to show it. She means to control you, Ada said plainly. And she uses me to do it. Every time we have a problem, she shows up. Have you noticed that? She appears when we fight. Like she is waiting. Joe said nothing. But he heard it. And something clicked quietly in the back of his mind. Outside, meanwhile, Benson Close was alive with opinions. Mama BC told her daughter that Ada is too proud. A woman carrying a pregnancy should humble herself. See how she sent Auntie Rose away. Mr. Chaka told the security man downstairs, these young couples. No respect for family. In my time, the man's sister was treated like a second mother. Caro, standing at the salon washing a client's hair, said nothing. But she heard everything. She always heard everything. Later that evening, Caro walked upstairs and sat across from Ada. Tell me something, Caro said, twisting one of her big earrings slowly. How long has Auntie Rose been visiting every time you and Joe fight? Ada frowned. Why? Just tell me. Ada thought. Since the beginning. Since the first year of the marriage. Whenever we had any trouble. She showed up, Caro finished. Yes. Caro nodded slowly. And where does she get her information from? Because you don't call her. Joe doesn't call her, or does he? Ada's frown deepened. Joe is a private man. He wouldn't. Mrs. Kate, Caro said. Ada blinked. What? Mrs. Kate. Ground floor. Sharp tongue. Window always open. Caro folded her arms. She is Auntie Rose's cousin, Ada. Did you know that? They grew up together in Ibadan. Mrs. Kate hears everything on this street. Everything. And she reports directly to Auntie Rose. The room went very, very quiet. Ada stared at Caro. How long have you known this? Ada asked slowly. I found out 2 weeks ago. I heard them on the phone. I was returning from the shop late and Mrs. Kate's window was open and Caro stopped. Looked at her friend. I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. I was trying to figure out what it meant. What it meant. Ada sat with that for a long time. All those times she had argued with Joe. All those times something private, something that only happened inside their 4 yellow walls, had somehow reached Auntie Rose by morning. Joe had thought it was coincidence. Ada had thought she was paranoid. She had not been paranoid. And then Ada's mind walked back further. 3 years of trying for a baby. 3 years of disappointment. And every time Ada fell apart, who was there first? Auntie Rose. With her soft words and her careful suggestions. Maybe Ada should see a different doctor. Maybe Ada should change her diet. Maybe the problem is stress. You know, some women just aren't built for easy pregnancies. Some women just aren't built. Ada closed her eyes. She didn't confront anyone that night. She sat with it. She let it move through her like a long, slow wave. Joe could see something was different about her face when he came home. She served dinner. She asked about his day. She was calm in a way that was different from her usual calm. What happened? He asked. Nothing, she said. Then, Joe, can I ask you something and you give me a completely honest answer? Always. In the 3 years we were trying to get pregnant, did you ever doubt me? Did anyone ever suggest that maybe the problem was me? Joe was very still. Where is this coming from? Please. Just answer. A long silence. Auntie Rose, he said carefully, once suggested that we consider testing separately, to know where the issue was coming from. And you? I told her we were testing together. As a couple. That it didn't matter where it was coming from. Ada nodded slowly. Did she suggest I go to a different doctor? Joe put down his fork. Ada. Did she? Yes, he said quietly. Ada nodded again. Something in her face settled. Became decided. Thank you, she said. She picked up her fork and continued eating. Joe watched her and felt a fear he couldn't name. The thing about a woman who has truly made up her mind is this: she doesn't announce it. She just moves. The next morning, Ada got dressed early. She wore her favorite blue dress, the one that made her feel powerful. She did her hair. She put on her earrings, the big gold ones she saved for important days. Joe watched her from the bedroom door. Where are you going? To have a conversation, Ada said simply. She went downstairs and knocked on Mrs. Kate's door. Mrs. Kate opened it. She was in her housewear, a wrapper tied around her chest, a cup of tea in hand. When she saw Ada, really saw her, saw the blue dress and the gold earrings and the expression on her face, something flickered behind her eyes. Ada, she said carefully. Good morning. How is the pregnancy? I know, Ada said. Mrs. Kate blinked. Know what, dear? I know you are Auntie Rose's cousin. I know you report everything you hear on this street to her. I know that every private moment of my marriage has been a conversation topic in someone else's house. Ada's voice was completely steady. Not angry. Just clear. I'm not here to fight you. I'm just here to let you know, I know. And what you do with that knowledge is between you and God. Mrs. Kate's face went through 17 different expressions in 4 seconds. Ada turned and walked back upstairs. She called Auntie Rose next. No warm greeting. No preamble. Auntie Rose. I need to ask you one direct question and I need one direct answer. Have you ever spoken to Mrs. Kate downstairs about my marriage? Silence on the other end. Then, I don't understand what you're. Yes or no? A longer silence. And in that silence, Ada got her answer. She said, Auntie Rose, I don't hate you. But I need you to understand something. This baby I am carrying is the answer to 3 years of pain. 3 years of me crying in bathrooms so Joe wouldn't see. 3 years of wondering if I would ever get to be a mother. Nobody fought for this baby harder than me. And nobody will use my marriage as entertainment while I carry her. She paused. Let it land. You are welcome in our home when you are invited. I will not be sending updates through Mrs. Kate. And if anything I have said is untrue, you are welcome to correct me. She ended the call. Her hands were shaking when she put the phone down. Not from fear. From the effort of holding all of that together long enough to say what needed to be said. She sat down on the kitchen chair and pressed both hands on her belly. The baby moved. A slow, rolling push against her palm. I know, Ada whispered. I know, baby. We're okay. Joe came home that evening to a different house. Not different in any way he could point to exactly. The walls were still yellow. The plates were still in the rack. Ada was sitting on the couch with her feet up, eating crackers and watching a film. But the air was different. Lighter. Like something that had been pressing down on the ceiling for months had finally lifted. He sat beside her. Did something happen today? Ada looked at him with that look she had, the look that said she was deciding how much of a story to tell. I had some conversations, she said. With Mrs. Kate. And your sister. Joe straightened. Ada. It's done, she said calmly. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I just said what was true. And now it's done. Joe sat with that. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Caro told you about Mrs. Kate. Yes. He nodded slowly. I suspected. About Kate. I didn't know what to do with it. Why? He looked at his hands. Because Rose is my sister. And I didn't want to believe that she would. He stopped. I should have protected you better. Ada looked at him. You didn't know. I should have looked harder. She took his hand. Held it against her belly. The baby moved again, that same rolling push. Joe's eyes went wide. Then soft. Then wet. She's saying hello, Ada said quietly. Joe pressed his palm flat against Ada's belly and felt the small, insistent life pushing back against him. And this man, this big, quiet, patient man who had driven to Mushin for flour and sat in rain for suya, this man cried for the second time in his life. Not from sadness. From something much bigger than that. 3 weeks later, on a Friday evening, Ada went into labor. Joe drove her to the hospital so fast he went through 2 red lights. Caro followed in a taxi, still wearing her salon apron, clutching her phone. Dr. Tunde met them at the entrance. Mama Bisi, who heard the car screech out from her window, did something no one expected. She went inside, made a pot of hot pepper soup, covered it, and sat downstairs with it waiting. Even Mr. Cheka stood at his doorway with his cap in his hand, watching the street, saying nothing for once. And Auntie Rose. Auntie Rose sat at home by her phone, waiting for a call that she no longer felt she had the right to make. It came anyway. Joe called her at 11:47 that night. "She's here," he said. His voice was broken open in the best possible way. "Auntie. She's here. She's perfect." Auntie Rose pressed her hand over her mouth. "Congratulations," she whispered. Her voice was different. Something in it had cracked, not in a bad way. In the way that things crack when they finally open. The next morning, Auntie Rose arrived at the hospital. She didn't bring a pot of food. She didn't bring advice. She sat beside Ada's bed and looked at the small bundle in Ada's arms, dark-skinned, tight-fisted, eyes shut against the world, and for a long time she didn't say anything. Then she said, "She looks like Joe when he was born." Ada looked at her. "You think so?" "Same nose. Same forehead wrinkle." Auntie Rose smiled. It was the first real smile Ada had ever seen on her face. "He cried every night for the first month. Mama nearly lost her mind." Ada laughed. Actually laughed. Something moved between the two women. Not forgiveness, not yet, not completely, but the beginning of it. The door of it cracked open. When they brought Ada and the baby home to Benson Close, the whole street was different. Mama Bisi met them at the door with her pot of pepper soup. She pressed Ada's hands and said, "You did well, my daughter." And for once, there was no sharpness in her. Just an old woman who understood what it cost to wait 3 years for something this small and this precious. Mr. Cheka stood at his door and tipped his cap. He didn't say a word. Which, for Mr. Cheka, was extraordinary. Mrs. Kate was at her window. When Ada looked up and caught her eye, Mrs. Kate nodded, a small, uncomfortable nod, but a nod. Ada nodded back. Nothing was forgotten. But something was released. Caro came up that evening and sat on the couch and held the baby for 40 minutes without putting her down once, talking to her in a running whisper about all the things they were going to do when she was older. Ada watched her best friend and felt her chest fill with something warm and uncontainable. Later that night, when the flat was finally quiet and the baby was asleep in her cot and the yellow walls were glowing in the lamplight, Joe came and sat beside Ada on the couch. "What are we calling her?" he said. They had argued about names for months. They had a list. They had crossed names off. They had never agreed. Ada looked at the small, sleeping face in the cot. "Joy," she said. Joe looked at his daughter. At her tiny nose. Her tight fists. The way she breathed in and out like the most serious thing in the world. "Joy," he said. He reached over and took Ada's hand. She laced her fingers through his. Outside, Benson Close hummed its usual evening noise, generators, music from somewhere, a child being called in for dinner, 2 neighbors arguing lightly about something that didn't matter. The city went on being the city. But in that small flat with yellow walls, on the 2nd floor of a building on a noisy Lagos street, something had come to its end and its beginning at exactly the same time. The craving that almost broke everything had, in the end, built something that couldn't be broken. Because this is what no one tells you about the hardest seasons. They don't just test you. They show you. They pull back the curtain and show you who is sitting in your corner and who is standing in your way and who has been quietly cheering from the back row this whole time. They show you how deep your love goes, and whether, when it is stripped of comfort and sleep and patience, there is still something left underneath. For Joe and Ada, there was. There always had been. The craving was never really about suya. Or kilishi. Or yam flour from a woman near a gutter in Mushin. It was about being seen. About being afraid and not knowing how to say it. About needing someone to show up in the rain even when it made no sense. And Joe showed up. Every single time. Some people say the real miracle of pregnancy is the baby. But those who have truly lived through it know, the real miracle is what it reveals about the love that was already there. Be careful what you wish for. But more importantly, be careful how you fight for it. Because how you fight says more about you than whether you win. And sometimes, the thing you're fighting for is already right there. You just have to stop breaking everything long enough to see it.